Hey everybody, today we're just going to do a simple water change here on my Brackish tank. And normally I would start draining the water first, but today we're going to go ahead and wipe the glass down first so that we can all see what's going on in the tank once I get started. All of the stuff you see on the glass comes off really easy. Mostly it's the brown diatom algae, but I'm sure some of that red cyanobacteria is in there too. You can see it just comes off in a single wipe. I'm trying not to go too forcefully. I don't want to freak Butterbean out too much. He's really skittish, and I've seen him bang and bash into things, and he's, you know, right now he's got scars on his head, presumably from doing just that. And so I don't want to get him too alarmed by thrashing my hands around in there. I've also got the tank pretty full. As I just mentioned, we haven't actually started draining the tank or anything yet. And then of course, lastly, I don't want to get this stuff all stirred up and flowing around the tank any more than it's going to already. I'll try to hold most of it right here in this batting material that I'm using. You'd think after the years and years of going through this that Butterbean wouldn't really be fazed by a simple water change very much, but it really stresses him out. I really hate doing it to him, but it's got to be done. So I don't know how well that's coming out on video, how well you can see that, but that's some gunky stuff we just got off of there. Now I need to grab my siphon hose. In this tank I do not use a regular gravel vac. I use an open-ended hose, and it allows me to actually suck up all those little white bits you see on the bottom are the shells of former dinners. Those are snail shells, and there's also some of that red cyanobacteria we're going to get out too. Yes, I do get that started with my mouth. I've had people comment on that in the past. I've never worried about it in all the years I've been doing this. I think I've gotten a mouthful of tank water once or twice. Once I actually did it and I almost got a lung full of tank water, so for those purposes I can say be really careful if you're going to use your mouth to get a siphon started. But it's not like, you know, gasoline or something like that. I would never use my mouth to get gasoline started. But fish tank water, worst case is I'm going to get a little bad taste in my mouth. I'm not too worried about that. And again, if you're a little bit careful when you do it, you don't get anything in your mouth at all. I've been doing it for years. So yes, I still use my mouth to get my siphon started. In this tank I got to be careful. I've got these little Bumblebee Gobies in here, and they're really small. They're also fearless. They're not bothered by me in the least while I'm in here doing this. And in fact, they'll even come over to see what I'm doing. They're curious. So of course Butterbean's going to be back in the corner I need to get to. Okay, little guy. Here I come. Okay, once he gets down the other end of the tank, I can get back here and get some of the shells out from in the back of the tank, a little bit at least. You got to be careful when you're doing this. As I said, you suck up the little gobies, and I got shrimp in this tank that are hard to see, but I also don't want to suck the gravel out of the tank, and that's easy to do if you're not paying attention. And frankly, if one of those fish, you know, one of the larger fish in this tank, I hit to the end of that, you know, that's quite a bit of suction. That could really put a shock on a fish's system getting hit by that. So be really careful if you're just siphoning with an open end like this. And that is it. We are full at 5 gallons. And just so happen to have 5 gallons of brackish water ready to go in the other room. So that's going to go back in. Put the water in the way I'm doing it. I've done videos explaining this before. You just sort of put the container in and kind of just roll it over in the water and remove it again. You can put the water back in the tank really quickly and without doing a lot of disturbance. You'll notice on the bottom there the gravel's not moving at all, and even the little shrimps and gobies that are in there that are barely even getting pushed around on what little bit of current I'm creating when I do this. Now, one other thing that I'm not going to include in this video, because I just don't want to take the time of me going and filling it up and everything, is I'm going to probably add another gallon of RO water to this tank. And the reason I'm going to do that is because normally I would do that before a water change. And I'm guessing that little bit of white stuff you can see swirling around in there is the salt. I just mixed this reservoir up about half an hour ago, and I didn't spend a lot of time swirling it. I assumed it would just sort of dissolve over time if I left it in there. So there you go. That's what happens when you don't really give it time to dissolve. So I don't recommend doing a water change where you've got pieces of the crystal salt floating around in the water. Now hopefully this isn't going to be an issue. I've had it in there before when I've mixed up my reservoir a little too soon. I've never had it to this degree, but I would imagine within just a few minutes with the water swirling around in the tank and all that, that's going to be completely gone. So what I will do now is go in and get that RO water that I was talking about while I'm letting that dissolve. Sit tight and enjoy the tank for a minute. Alright, so the reason I'm topping it off with RO water is because when you've got water evaporating out of a tank, it doesn't matter whether it's a freshwater tank or in this case this is a brackish tank, when you've got water evaporating out of the tank, the only thing that is evaporating out of the tank is the water. It's leaving behind all of the dissolved solids, and whether that's just calcium or magnesium, whether that's nitrates, whatever it is, it stays behind and the water leaves the tank. And so as the water level in your tank gets lower and lower, the concentrations of dissolved solids gets higher and higher. So when I start a water change on this tank, I want it to be a certain specific gravity when I'm done, and that's roughly 1.005-ish, maybe 1.008, somewhere in that neighborhood. So if I start the water change and, you know, we got the tank established at 1.005, we'll say, and then some time goes on and I come in here and the water is now an inch lower, Well, the water in that tank is going to be more salty than 1.005. It's going to be a higher specific gravity than that. So if I simply did a water change and I topped it off with the same 1.005 water, I'd be adding it to water that was higher than that to begin with, and I'd end up with a higher salinity. So what you do is you just top the tank off with RO water. We get it back to the level where I started from. Once I've topped it back off with fresh water, we know we're back up to 1.005, right where the tank is supposed to be. And then when I do a water change, I can take 5 of those gallons out and then put 5 gallons of 1.005 specific gravity water back in, and the tank stays nice and balanced, and we don't shift the specific gravity. It doesn't change slowly over time, etc. In this case, I'm simply I'm topping the tank off afterwards. I took 5 gallons out, I'm putting 5 gallons back in, and now I'm topping the tank off. That's not the ideal way to do it, because I did take 5 gallons of concentrated, more concentrated water out, and now that I'm putting this fresh water back in, it is going to lower the specific gravity, but only by a very, very little bit, and I don't do this as a rule. I'm only doing this in this particular case because of what I said in the beginning. I wanted to get the glass wiped down and lower the water level in the tank, the better that was for me. So rather than top it off to start with, I'm just going to go ahead and top it off in the end. And I'll finish that thought by saying that by nature of the euryhaline animals, just because they're brackish animals, they've evolved to be able to bounce around rapidly through wide ranges of salinity. So me doing a water change and shifting the salinity in the tank a little bit here and there, and not being super careful about measuring the salts and checking the salinity and all that, it doesn't matter on this kind of tank. These fish are fine as long as I know I'm in the neighborhood of where I want that water to be. And I am. I'm always in the neighborhood of where I want that water to be, because I know how much salt to mix in with the amount of water to mix in, and so on and so forth. And I haven't used my refractometer in a while, but I do give a little taste test to my water, just a little dab on the finger and a little tap on the tongue, and I can tell you by how salty it tastes whether I'm in the ballpark or not, and we're fine. So all I need to do is finish dissolving the last little bit of water that's in my reservoir. I'm not going to pour that in just yet. I want to make sure that's good and dissolved, and I probably will need to add a little bit more RO water here when I'm done with that. And I'm also going to go ahead and get the glass wiped down when I'm finished with all that, because if you've ever dealt with a tank that's got any kind of salt in it at all, whether it's just aquarium salt even, it gets on the glass, and trying to get that salt residue off the glass is just a real pain in the butt. So I'm not going to worry about getting any of that on video too. It just takes a couple of treatments of some Windex and some fresh paper towels every time, so you don't smear the salt around, and you're good to go. So there you go. That was it. That was a simple water change. No filter this time. Just the water out, water in, and wiping the glass down, getting rid of any little, minor debris or little plant stuff or so on and so forth. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget, this one here is my Brackish tank. See you on the next one.